Voice UI is interesting because it's unlike what came before it, while also being having a history unlike anything that came before it as well. So contrast this with the web, which has some very clear ancestors. We've got the desktop, which really birthed the website, right? The website took its cues from the desktop OS, from publishing, from print, and then added things on top of that as well. The desktop, of course, came from the physical desktop, and the web maybe birthed voice UI, but not really. We only think of voice UI as being quite different if we think of Siri or Cortana or what have you as really coming from the web. But if we think of it as coming from conversation, then obviously we have millennia of experience to draw on. And even if we think about in terms of technology as well, we have a lot of experience. Think about calling your local bank. The likelihood that you call into your bank and not have to speak with an actual person is quite high, and that's been going on for over a decade now. So what do we need to think about when designing a voice UI? One thing we need to think about is that it's not just using voice. The ultimate goal is, of course, to have a conversation. We're not quite there just yet, but that's the ultimate goal. Another thing to keep in mind as well is that it's increasingly, as we've seen with the announcements with Google and Amazon recently, it's becoming multimodal. It's not just voice, but it's also display as well. So the first question we need to ask is about the use case. And we need to ask, do we even need a voice UI? Right now, we're sort of in the phase that I call the Facebook page for plumbers land rush, which of course takes its name from around 2008, where every single business, small and large, needed a Facebook page. Not every business needs a Facebook page. Not every website or app needs a voice skill as well. What are some of the use cases that really make sense? Often I like to think of this as thinking, what could my butler do for me? Which I'm seeing some blank faces, so maybe not everyone has a butler. It's pretty awesome, highly recommend it. But what it really means is that a good voice skill will control something else, primarily something like home automation. That's the canonical use case for that. It can order something simple. Domino's or pizza is the canonical example there. Or it can provide a snippet of information. The goal, of course, again, is to have that conversation, but again, not quite there just yet. So we see some of the use cases here. Now let's play a game I like to call good skill, bad skill, where we look at two different types of skills and think about which one might be good, which one might not be. Ordering a birthday cake is an example of a skill that probably doesn't work for voice. The reason for this is it's generally a one-off purchase. It has a lot of different options, and it's highly visual. On the other hand, ordering the usual from your local pizza place is probably a good skill. Once you have that initial hump where you order with all of your toppings and all of your different options, it's quite easy with each subsequent order. The goal here is to think of, does voice make it easier than actually going on the website? Two more use cases we have are general information versus searching for something quite specific. What you're saying when you search for a general topic is, Alexa, I don't really know what I want, but I want a lecture on it. Think about it. How often are you going to ask a friend, hey, what do you know about reserve currencies? Not that often. Searching the web for a specific piece of knowledge, however, is a good use case. Because if anything, you'll ask your friend, hey, what do you know about reserve currencies? They'll say, oh, I know quite a bit from my days working on Wall Street. And you'll say, so what really are the benefits that this provides to the nations that provide the reserve currencies? So just like with the voice UI, we would say, what benefits are provided to global reserve currencies? We've now determined whether we should have a skill. We've determined a skill that serves voice well. And now we're ready to design our voice UI. So let's talk about some principles for voice UI. The first one is to speak like a human. First and foremost, the VUI should speak like a human. Some may say this isn't a good idea because a computer is a computer, a human's a human, never the twain shall meet. But I would argue that there's no real uncanny valley when it comes to voice. And again, we have thousands, millions of years of developing what are good practices for conversations. Let's put that to use. Actually, before this, the language philosopher Paul Grice, he came up with 4 maxims for what he calls the cooperative principle, the types of things that we do in a conversation that make it a good conversation. The first one is quantity. We're essentially saying as much as is needed and no more. Think about when you go to a party and you're cornered by someone who speaks and speaks and speaks and speaks and speaks and speaks, right? It's pretty brutal. The alternative, of course, are those laconic people where we really have to work really, really hard to draw anything out of them. Also brutal as well. On the flip side of quantity is quality. This is a conversation where your partner says things that are true and are supported by evidence. If we have someone that we speak with who's always telling us things that aren't true, then we're not going to go to that person again. The third one is relation. Whatever is said is relevant. If you're in a conversation, you go, hey guys, I went to the greatest restaurant this weekend and I had the best hamburger. And somebody goes, it's really hot out right now. It's true. It's the right amount of quantity. It's no more, no less than is needed, but it's not relevant at all. And then finally, manner. Clarity, brevity, lack of ambiguity. This is sort of the lawyerly speak, where you go, how did you do on the test? And the response is, I took the test, right? These are key principles of good communication, but so often they're ignored in VUI. A core example of this is the voice UI we've had for decades when you call into a bank and it tells the user how they're going to speak exactly. Thank you for calling, it's Megabank. What would you like to do today? Say balance to check your balance. Say transfer to transfer money. Say business loans to get more information about business loans. Say home mortgage to get more information about home mortgages. Say repeat to start over. Ugh, it's the worst, right? What would be better? Thanks for calling Megabank. What would you like to do today? That's how people speak. It's not easy, right? It's not easy because we have to put in the work to understand what's being said. Think about just an affirmative answer. When you go, okay, is this what you wanted? I could say, yep, yeah, yes, sure, whatever, right? There's thousands of different ways to do this, and we really have to put in that work and think ahead of time on how people are going to speak to us. One good way to do this is to get off paper. When we're designing for the web, what we do is we draw it out or we go on the web and we sketch it out. When we're writing copy, we do the same thing. What we need to do here is, after we've written the copy, actually have those conversations with people, see how they respond. It doesn't mean that you're going to understand everything, and we need to put in the effort to handle those errors. There are 2 major types of errors that could happen. Either the user messes up or the skill messes up. The skill might mess up by not understanding the user or hearing the wrong thing. This could be handled with better hardware, better software, or being upfront about the confidence level of the understanding. For example, at 80% or above, the skill might say, okay, ordering the pizza with mushrooms. At 40 to 79%, it might say, I think you ordered pizza with mushrooms. Do you want me to go ahead and place that order? At 40% or below, you say, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can you repeat? On the flip side, not just handling the errors, but handling success as well. Again, think about those conversation partners you have. If you were to say, hey, Julie, can you save me a spot? And you just get this blank stare, right? As developers, if you work, say, in the command line, you're used to things going well and not getting any response. There's a reason that hasn't been done since the days of Unix. It's because we expect a response when things go well. So overall, the big thing to take away from this is to leverage what you already know, leverage what you've been doing for 20, 30, 40 years so far, and speak like a human in your voice UI. So now we have a little bit of time for questions where I will do my best to respond like a human.
Okay, so does anyone have a question?
Just a comment more than a question. So you said we've been talking as humans for a long time. In fact, we've also been designing visual user interfaces for a long time, because theatre has been part of human culture for a long time. And you're just saying, basically, to have a good visual user interface, you need to have like a person who's writing a play or a sketch.
Mhm.
You write it on paper, and then you get the actors to perform, and then you modify it to make it how you want to project it to the audience. That's basically, you're saying it's the same algorithm for designing visual user interface. Am I correct with that sort of interpretation?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I've never done theater, so I can't say entirely. But I would imagine that it has a lot of the same principles. It may be perhaps even more analogous to if you go on an interview, right? If you go on an interview, you don't know exactly what's going to be asked. You don't know what your other partner is going to say. But generally, if you want to have a good interview, either for job or for media or whatever, you're going to sketch out ahead of time some of the things that you're going to say. All right. Well, thanks so much, and have a great day.